Hello, welcome to Math for All, where we try to make math creative, curious, and inclusive for everyone. I'm Molly Vokey.
And I'm Heidi Savnani. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are really excited about this conversation that we are going to be having with Crystal and Shane. If you would like to follow along and know who our next amazing guests are and find a little bit more about them, you can do that at Math for All on Blue Sky or our YouTube channel or on our Facebook page or on the website. I mean, really, you have so many options there that you can just follow along at.
So many options. And if you are interested in our book, Math Activators, you can find that at Didex. And we are going to have a phenomenal conversation today about the pedagogy of voice. And we're going to be talking about street data. It's very exciting. So we are going to be talking to Shane Safir and Crystal Watson today, and I'm going to introduce them. Shane Safir has worked at every level of the education system, from the classroom to the boardroom, for over 25 years. In 2003, after teaching in San Francisco and Oakland and organizing in the community to launch a new public high school, Safir became the founding principal of June Jordan School for Equity, an innovative national model written by leading scholar Linda Darling-Hammond. For over a decade, Shane has provided equity-centered leadership coaching, strategic planning, and professional learning support for schools, districts, and organizations across the U.S., Canada, and beyond. She is the author of The Listening Leader, Creating the Conditions for Equitable School Transformation, and the co-author of best-selling Street Data, a next-generation model for equity, pedagogy, and school transformation. Transformation. And I'm going to let them tell you about the new book that's coming. Crystal Watson is an innovative, passionate, and authentic mathematics educator and lifelong learner who you can count on to always ask, what do the students think? Her work is centered around providing space for voice and identity development in order for everyone, particularly those most marginalized, to experience high quality, deep, and personal mathematics. Crystal has worked alongside other scholars to develop culturally responsive, reflective, and/or anti-racist curricular resources that center young people in every lesson. You might catch her at both local and national conferences, on podcasts, developing and leading professional development sessions, or having conversations about how we are cultivating the youth-centered spaces. So let's bring them in. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
We are so excited, and thank you for being here. And yeah, we go live and people are like, well, why do you do that? And this is just what we do. And like, we've had pets and children and spouses and partners and all the things show up. So we just embrace it how it is.
It's math for all.
Exactly.
Whatever.
For anyone who wants to join.
Yeah. So we love to start with this question because it lets people know a little bit more maybe about the personal side of you, not just your academic and career successes. So what is your math story?
I'll start. My math story, I don't remember ever loving being in math. I remember being the girl that, now I'm going to show my age a little bit, way back when we were in elementary school and we had conduct grades. You remember those?
Oh, yes.
I always got a D or an F in conduct because I talked too much. And
So you became a teacher so you could talk in class.
Okay. That's exactly what I say to the students. I'm like, you should become an educator. But so I never really remembered loving math. I remembered when I started hating it, though.
Oh, yeah.
Started hating math around middle school, where I was forced to sit, get notes, memorize, and work by myself all the time. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I did the bare minimum. So I did enough to get out of high school. And then once I got and I did okay. I wasn't an, AP class type girl. But once I got to college, I tested into remedial math classes. So you have to pay for them, but you get no credit. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I had an amazing remedial math professor, Dr. Couch, and she helped me see that the importance of math in changing the trajectory of my life, kind of circumventing the cycle of poverty throughout my family, those types of things. So really started to like math. Never, and I still don't love math. I'll just tell you that. I like math. I love the possibilities that math opens.
Yes.
So then after that, she allowed me to be her co-teacher, her TA, for the study session that you had to do with the remedial math classes. And the rest is history. So then, I'm a career changer. And when I went to go change my career, I said, I want to teach anything but math. And the curriculum manager that was interviewing me was like, but we need you really bad. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to trust. She was like, I promise we'll support you, et cetera, et cetera. And I fell in love with teaching and learning and doing and understanding math and the relationships that humans have with math, particularly humans that happen to be most marginalized. So here I am.
Awesome.
Oh,
What's your story, Shane?
Yeah.
I love getting to hear your story. I haven't heard some of those plot points are new for me. So that was super fun. And I love this question because it really made me dig deep. I got a few years on Crystal too, speaking of aging ourselves. But it was like, do I have a math story? I actually feel like it's almost like a non-story, and that's a story in and of itself, if that makes any sense. Like when I look back on my math trajectory, I see this like fade out to 11th grade. Well, I actually think I had some aptitude in math as a kid. And I think when things were a little less gendered in the classroom, like I was a mathy kid. Mm-hmm. And then by middle school, I was always a kid, very talkative like Crystal, who I had to have a connection with the teacher to want to learn. And I had one middle school math teacher, Mr. Shipe, who I just loved. And I had him for 2 years. He was an older gentleman, salt and pepper beard, really funny, really engaging. I think he came to our house for dinner once even.
Oh, wow.
And I just loved math in middle school. And by the time I got to high school, somehow 10th grade, 11th grade, I cemented this identity of like not a math person, not a math student, not good at math. And I took my last math class, I think trig in 11th grade. I opted out of 12th grade math and I never took math again. Ever in college. I partly chose my university because it didn't require math. It's embarrassing to say that, but that is like a true fact. That's a true fact. And that it makes me sad to admit that because it does feel like, to use Crystal's word, like that's a lot of missed possibility. Like I feel something got disconnected or missed in that trajectory for me. But thank you for the question. It's interesting.
You are not alone. Lots of people that we talk to are not big lovers of math and then end up like Crystal end up teaching math and then choosing their career around math after really not liking it, like Heidi. Yep. Heidi never liked math, and here she is hosting a math show and consulting in mathematics. And
yeah, I mean, I think it's part of our stories, and that leads to why we look at math or maybe education in the ways that we do, right? Yeah. And the stories that data or math classes tell about us out in the world based on just like the surface level of looking. And it's like such a I think about like how many other people didn't have the moment later in life or someone later in life who either forced them into or gave them the opportunity to look at either education as a whole or mathematics and say like, no, there's a place for you here. You're not just one thing or one type of learner, that we have a much bigger story about ourselves and our experiences and what we bring to the table as both learners and as educators?
Well, that leads right into the question. So here we go. So what does a pedagogy of voice look like, and why does it matter in the moment that we are in?
I can kick us off, and then I'm going to pass it to the
Please.
expert in the room, which is Crystal. So Pedagogy of Voice is a concept from the book Street Data, which I was the lead author on, and it comes out of, there it is, chapter 5, which is about the North Star of student agency. And what if, instead of measuring incremental gains and fixating so much on satellite data, right, the quantitatives, what if we really expanded and oriented our data gathering toward this much larger mark, if you will, of student agency? And part of that chapter unpacks this idea of a pedagogy of student voice contrasted with a pedagogy of compliance, which I think, without saying much more, we all know what that looks like and feels like. We walked into many a classroom and probably been students in many a classroom that was very compliance centered. And so this book that Crystal and I have been working on with our colleagues Marlo Bagseek and Dr. Safsan Jabber is taking that chapter, and it's really building it out into an entire framework around pedagogy. And I don't know, I feel like, so I have so many feelings about this, but the question, what does it look like? I think at its heart, it looks like classrooms and learning spaces that are rooted in radical love, which we talk about in the book, that are deeply relational spaces, and that are oriented toward awakening student voice in all its different manifestations, not just oral, right, but written, mathematical, expressive, dramatic, artistic, all these ways that young people can and should have access to voice in the world. And the second half of the book is structured around these 4 agency domains from Street Data, which in that book were identity, belonging, mastery, and efficacy. And we chose as a team to shift mastery to inquiry. So the book that we wrote is a chapter on identity, pedagogies, a chapter on belonging, a chapter on inquiry and efficacy. And there's so much in those chapters. I won't go down like a rabbit hole, but I'll just highlight a couple of things that maybe could be relevant. Is it looks like a strong focus on story, what we call the pedagogy of storyintation in our classrooms. And one practice we profile is math autobiographies in the book. It looks like a strong orientation towards circles, circle pedagogy, and all the different types of circles and how that can be a vehicle for equalizing power and voice in the classroom. It looks like a focus on radical inclusion and designing our classroom spaces from the margins. And there's a beautiful part of the book that our colleague Leighton really helped to develop, which is about, kind of comes from the principles of disability justice. And pedagogies connected to that world, which is, I'm so excited to bring that into the world. And then it looks like a lot of dialogue, like classrooms that are rich in conversation, right? And dialogue. And we offer lots of different tools and protocols and ways into inquiry-centered kind of dialogue-rich spaces, including a focus on what would it look like if we really prioritize making learning public, right? Opportunities for children to present their learning to audiences, increasingly authentic audiences, not just in the big ways like the capstone at the end of 12th grade, but in small ways, like within classroom, peer-to-peer, class to class, older kids to younger kids, parents, community members, capstone, all the things. So that's something else that I'm really excited about. So that's a little bit like high level, kind of what some of the concepts and practices are. But I would love to invite Crystal to talk more about the math application. Maybe we can both comment on why we think it matters.
Yeah, for sure. For math, oh my gosh. So I know that there were some things that Shane just said where you're like, oh, that should be math class. That should be math class. And it makes a lot of them also make me think of mathematical practices, right? So I'm thinking about mathematical practices like the fact that I want my kids to be able to co-create and co-craft questions, right? Yep. And how can we do that if our students don't feel that radical inclusion? They're not going to feel a sense of belonging to where they feel like they can speak out and give pieces of themselves to the work. And so, you know, there's certain things that are very mathematical about the pedagogy of voice. And that's what I loved about the idea when Shane reached out, I loved the idea because I was like, this is not a content-based idea. This idea is something that can be picked up and used in any content space, including your fine arts, including all of your electives, career-centered spaces. It is literally something that can be picked up and used. But for math, I feel like it is so it will be so advantageous in math spaces because of the juxtaposition of compliance versus voice. Because when we think about math classes, I don't know about y'all, but I think about compliance automatically. And I live for non-compliance in math classes. When I was a teacher, my desks were never in rows. We were always in either groups or like a semicircle, or they were facing each other so we could do little Socratic seminars in math fashion, things like that. And it was organized chaos. But when I go into the average math classroom, it is very compliance based. It's I'm giving you this standard to learn. You're going to learn it this way. And then I'm going to teach you these 3 strategies, and you can choose from these 3 strategies.
Yeah.
So it's very compliance based, and there's a lot of, and I was talking to someone yesterday about the fact that in math, a lot of times students don't get to edit and retry. So I just, I think about rough draft math, right?
Yes, I was just gonna say that. Mandy Jansen.
Mandy, shout out to Mandy, love her so much.
Yes.
Our work is transformational because it makes us think of math from almost a humanities standpoint, and the word humanity is in it. Come on, y'all, let's use it. So thinking of math from a humanities standpoint, where we are able to let students receive deep, meaningful feedback multiple times and provide iterations of their thoughts. That's agency right there. When we allow students and we give space, we give space, opportunity for students to provide iterations of their thinking until they get to a right answer. And that right answer might not be the year that we have them. They might come to us next year and be like, oh my gosh, I finally understand what we were learning last year. Yada, yada, yada. I mean, I've had students reach out to me and they're now graduating and they're like, Miss Watson, college math is so easy because it's easier than 8th grade math. And I'm like, well, you're welcome. But no, for real, the voice piece is just widely missing. And in math, just to give a practical application, in math class, and I'll give you an example of when I was in the classroom and then as an administrator. When I was in the classroom, every Friday was Feedback Friday. Any student that was ever in my classroom would tell you this. And I still have receipts, Pear Deck provides receipts. But we would have Feedback Friday and the students would tell me, Ms. Watson, I loved this week. I want more of this. I want less of this. And then I would compile all of their feedback. And the next week I would do something different and I would call it out. And I would say, thank you so much for your feedback. This is what we're doing different this week based on your feedback. And we're going to test it out to see if we learn better. And it was just a weekly thing that we did. And that's how I developed like this stance of, I want to know what the students think. There is no administrator that can evaluate me enough to tell me all the things that students can tell me that see 180 days a year. Right. So as an administrator now, I get all the discipline and all the things. And sometimes I get students that are like, I don't understand what they're doing in math. And I'm like, well, come down to my office and I'll show you. And I'll hold a small group. I don't care. I'll come up, hold a small group. I'll come in. My 5th and 6th grade teacher right now, Miss Lampley, 5th and 6th graders they lose their minds very often. So I'll go in and help her and she'll have a small group and I'll go up to the Clear Touch board and teach something. And they're like, oh, that's a different way to do it, And Miss Lampley is a brilliant teacher. And so just doing things to where students have the opportunity to talk to each other and then also be able to share what their mistakes, my favorite mistake. Like I could talk about this the whole podcast because I'm so passionate about it.
But Crystal, you're so right, because as I'm reading this, my only lens is math, right? I only do math teaching with teachers and students. So it's my only lens that I look at things, although I have an administrative degree that I don't currently use. But as I'm reading this, I'm thinking like, this is everything that when I go to a conference, all the things that I want to bring back, all of those things are in here, like tied up in a little bow. Just go do this. And then, but it's not just math. Like that's what's so incredible to me, is that for as long as I've been doing this job, which is like 15 years, I've been working on some of the very things that you're talking about in this book, maybe not as specifically as you've gone into such great detail, but it's all of the things that we've been working towards in the math community are in there, plus more with reasons for it and data to support it. And like, I don't know if you can tell, but I love this book.
Oh, that really warms my heart.
It changed me as an educator, and Shane hears that a lot. She does. Her and Jamila both hear it a lot. And, it definitely changed my life. We led book studies, like I said, in my district, and I'm consolidating a school this year. So I'm bringing 2 schools together, and I'll have an entirely new staff, really. And I can't wait, because I'm like, let me buy this book for all my staff next year, and we need to do a street data book study, because it changed me as a math coach, everything.
Well, the intent is not, even though we're here to talk on the math end of it, these ideas are cross-curricular. And so it's that idea of, and I think the American experience, or like the maybe last 100 or so years of the math worldwide experience, has been more like there is an expert and just like throw information at you, and I don't really care about your situation or what you're bringing to the table. Whereas I think in literacy, we've had some of this idea of the first time you do something, it's not expected to be good. I do both math. Like, I never told my student, like, oh yeah, the first time you write something, it should be perfect. But I was 100% expected to, within 20 minutes in a math classroom, be able to do or like redo whatever it was that the math teacher was doing. And it's their 25th year in Algebra 1. And I've only been there for, like 20 minutes. And so it's when we think about those ways of seeing and how we look at that, like, and where voice comes in and where voice doesn't. And literacy is under attack as far as like student voice and agency and all of those things as well. But I feel like the starting point was a little bit further ahead.
Sure.
Whereas in the math classroom, I feel like we are playing catch up for a while in and how we look at and what kinds of information we're gathering from students. Can you talk, Crystal, a little bit about implementation in your like larger school situation? And Shane, I'm sure you can add to that as well.
Yeah. Are you talking about like a pedagogy of voice implementation? I think any implementation has to include modeling. You have to see it. And that's the one thing that gets you some stock in the game as an administrator too, is that if I can come in and I can co-teach with you, or I can model something, then I receive a little bit more respect, right, for what I'm coaching you for. And that's not just in teaching, that's anywhere. LeBron isn't learning from just some, somebody that's never picked up a basketball,
and he has a coach. Like,
exactly.
He has a coach.
Yes.
And, in New England, we would say that about the former quarterback. Like, he still had a coach.
Yes. And he did. Exactly. Yeah. So for me, the implementation starts with self. So I think it starts with unpacking the biases and the ways that we're socialized to receive and to give education, because education has been set up to be something that we do to and for students instead of with. So we've got to start with our own mindsets to say, you know what, this isn't education anymore. It might have worked back whenever. I would argue that it's never worked for everyone. And I'm in the business to make sure that everyone has a good educational experience. We spend more time in school than we do at home during the school year. So if I'm telling you that you have to spend all these hours in a school setting, why wouldn't I allow that to be a space where you are able to use your own voice, you're able to develop ways to communicate and socialize with others, using academic language and your own language. It doesn't have, I'm going to quote Chris Enden, ratchetemic is okay. Because I'll go into a classroom and I'll be real ratchet, but I'm also going to throw you a denominator. That's not the bottom number. That's the denominator, the numerator, product, difference, quotient, all of the things, right? So Kringle, see, dogs. Didn't you say that we
did?
Yes.
But also, I love that you just yelled Kringle.
I know.
That should be the title of the episode.
So that's his.
We'll do a whole reel just on that.
Right. So anyway, I'm thinking you get started with yourself, and then the implementation, try something small like a feedback Friday or a tell me Tuesday or whatever you come up with, so that you can allow students to tell you what they think and what they feel about the classroom, and how you can create a more cohesive and inclusive environment for them to feel like they can fail forward in your classroom, because they're going to do it, because math has that stigma that it's hard. So, and it can be hard. It is hard. And that's what some of us like about it, is that it's challenging. So start with self and then start small. Just get started. Shane, what do you think?
I don't know. I have so many questions. Shane, I would love for you to talk about how does this translate? Like, she's talking about start with yourself, obviously, but like you have been able to do this large scale. Can you talk about that?
Do this, meaning the kind of the street data model?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, street data is like the systems/school transformation framework, right? And it's really fractal. It can be used from the classroom all the way up to the district or county or region, right? The same kind of models and tools can work. But I feel like this recurring pattern as street data was born into the world and people started using it was people would say, this is really great, but like daily learning experiences of children are not changing. Like what happens for the 6 hours a day that the babies are in the classroom is actually still feeling, teacher as expert, lecturing at the front of the room, or drill and kill, not inquiry based, not activating or awakening of student voice. And so that's where this book, that's like the genesis of this book, if you will, or the why. I think that there's a chapter of this book that's about how the street data model looks when you use it in the classroom. And it actually profiles a math middle school teacher and a drama teacher from Canada. The math middle school teachers from San Francisco, the drama teachers from Canada. And it takes you through listen, uncover, reimagine, and move at a classroom level. And I think what I feel most energized and excited about is to really try to answer, as our book is published in August and beyond, to try to answer the question you just asked, which is like, what if that happens across the entire system? What if all the teachers in the system are orienting toward these processes and these ways of being, and this goal of having student voice and agency be the center of the conversation about instruction? What would that change? What would that make possible? And to your earlier question about why does this matter right now? I think children and adults are feeling very powerless right now. I think people are feeling very, very disempowered and stripped of agency. And it's hard to figure out what the next right thing is to do. And I feel like this book, we talk about it as a seed store. We kind of open these doors. We're like, come on in. We've got shelves and shelves of seeds. We are not going to tell you how to plant your garden We're not going to dump a Home Depot tree into the middle of it. Like, you get to design, but we're going to offer you this array of ways to do this and to really be about student voice. And my hope is that educators reading it will feel a real sense of agency, will feel like, okay, I can see some ways to shift, some small moves and changes, and that will translate over time into student agency as well.
It struck me when I was reading about compliance, and I never really thought about schools turning out students to be compliant so they go into life and just accept everything how it is. For me, that was like, oh, of course. So that everyone will just do what they want us to do, whether you're a woman, a person of color, anybody who's even more marginalized than that. And that right now makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. So this is like imperative that people start looking at this critically.
And I would just thank you for that. I would footnote that by saying in chapter 1 of our book, we try to make the case for a pedagogy of voice, and we talk about the purpose of education, quoting the prolific, unrivaled James Baldwin, who talked to teachers, right, like 60 years ago about this question, and said that the real purpose of education is to be able to ask questions of the world, to interrogate what is right and what is wrong. But no society is really anxious to have that kind of person around. And we just address the reality that is still true. We have lots of evidence that society is not eager to have learners who are agentic, who ask questions, who push back. And so what do we do with that, right? Do we capitulate and just put our heads down, stick them in rows and drill and kill them? Or do we say, nope, we're actually going to call into being, we're going to create a whole different landscape here. And in doing so, really revitalize democracy, make it possible to sustain the kind of society that we want to have. I think that's one of my big dreams of the book. I don't want to speak for Crystal, but I feel like a re-energizing of democracy is part of what could come from this pedagogy. What do you think?
No, I love that you just brought that up, because it actually just put a light bulb went off in my head. Another reason why I think that it is important, and it has been important, is, we talk about what percentage of people show up at the polls for local elections, national elections, all this other stuff. We never teach them the importance of voting for things that are close to them and that affect them. Imagine if you had classrooms where students got to have a voice and vote on how things are given to them. Yes, we have standards and skills that we have to teach them, et cetera, but how we teach them is all up to us. Imagine if we opened it up and had them vote and have a voice and be able to make decisions alongside us, and what skill that builds for them for life going forward, to say my voice matters, and my voice has mattered since kindergarten. I don't have to wait until I'm 18 for my voice to matter. I think that's so powerful. And I'm just thinking about, as a child, if I had those experiences, what would that have meant for me, to be more involved in, even, it took me forever to understand why I should care about local, or midterm elections. I'm like, I don't know. Who's going to be president? That's what I'm worried about, Right. And it's like, the president really doesn't hold that much power if you really look at the grand scheme of things. Right now we're in a pickle because, everybody's with him. But yeah. So I think that's so powerful. I can't wait to
yeah. It screams of democracy, really. Yeah, really, it's bringing everyone into the mix and telling everyone that their voice is important. Yeah, that's the whole message of the book. You matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are. You matter. Right?
Yep, that's true.
I think so. I would love to continue talking about this forever, but I know that we need to respect your time. So please tell us, how can our listeners learn more about you?
We are working on a Pedagogies of Voice website, and we will share that with you as soon as it's live. It should be in about a month. We have a Corwin webinar to launch our book on May 21st, so you can probably sign up for that on the Corwin website. They also have a pre-order. I don't know if it's a pre-order or like a raffle. There's some sort of Corwin, invitation around our book, and apparently they've gotten like 1,000 people now have signed up.
Yay!
Cool. And then I'm at shanesafir.com. I'm just about done with X. I would put my X handle out there, but I just can't really deal with that anymore. So
I hear you.
Instagram, shanesafir_author. And maybe I'll be exploring some new ones soon.
And I am Crystal M. Watson on all socials. I hardly am on X. I'm only on there for media kits that people want me to send out for keynotes and things like that. So you won't see much from me on there, but Blue Sky is kind of my place. And I'm really loving Blue Sky so far. And Instagram, you can get me on Instagram, but my Instagram is a mix of personal and professional.
Yeah. We're all good with that.
So
that is a super.
So take it or leave it.
Yes. So if you're easily ruffled in your feathers,
no pearl clutching people.
Oh my gosh. This was delightful. We so appreciate your time, and I hope that someday we cross paths in person.
Absolutely. NCTM in the fall. Are you coming to Atlanta?
We will be there for SM.
Okay.
Probably not TM at the moment. That was
Okay.
a little
got
bit
you.
of a some things were accepted and some things weren't. So
No, tell me about it. And I'm on the committee and I've got questions. So
yeah.
Just saying.
Math tea. I want to be behind the scenes for the math tea.
Girl, something happened.
Yeah.
Because there's people that didn't get accepted that should have. And it's definitely there's some things that we gotta reevaluate at NCTM for sure.
It was, and we have to. I'm done. I'm just gonna not say anymore.
Yeah, we're good on that subject.
Yeah. We'll have to get on Zoom without the live and talk.
Yes.
Signal.
Signal.
For the NCTM talk.
Oh my gosh.
The invitation. This was really delightful. And let us know when it's live. And thank you, Crystal, for sharing so much wisdom today.
We absolutely will. It should be live out on YouTube right away. We'll double check and make sure. So and we will be sharing widely on all the social places. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. This was fun. Thank you so much.
All right. I mean, we could have done that conversation forever.
I know. We say this every time. And
I know we do, but we get to talk to the best people ever.
I know. I feel like maybe we should see if I say this and then we have had so many people on who have amazing books coming on, but we should maybe look at a book study maybe with Math for All if we want to do that. So let us know.
You just said that out loud on air. So now we have to do that. Okay, fine.
Speaking of people who we love and who have books coming out.
Right. On May 1st, we will be talking to Liesl McConchie. We love talking to Liesl. And as always, you can find our book at Didex.
And until then, we hope that you keep math creative, curious, and inclusive for everyone. Have a great night.
Bye.